Two of the most fascinating names in cinema and fashion have just shocked fans with unexpected news. Tim Burton, the visionary filmmaker behind some of the most iconic Gothic stories of our time, and Monica Bellucci, the Italian screen goddess admired worldwide, have announced the end of their relationship. After only 2 years together, the pair released a statement filled with respect and care, but behind such carefully chosen words, fans are left wondering, what really happened between them? Because this wasn't just any Hollywood romance. It was a story that felt pulled straight out of a movie, a legendary director, and an international star whose paths crossed in the most cinematic way possible. From a chance meeting years ago, to a reunion that sparked headlines across Europe, their relationship seemed like destiny. So why did it all come to an end? And could there be more to the story than what the public is being told? The announcement. On September 19th, the news broke, and it came straight from the couple themselves. In a joint statement, Tim Burton and Monica Bellucci announced that they were parting ways. The words they chose were calm, even tender, with much respect and deep care. It was the kind of phrasing that feels polished, almost poetic, but it left fans stunned. Because in Hollywood, breakups often explode with drama, accusations, or messy details splashed across the tabloids, but this wasn't that. Their statement was short, respectful, and final. No public blame, no long explanations, just two legendary names closing a chapter with quiet dignity. Still, that simplicity made people even more curious. Why now? Why after only 2 years? Was this simply a relationship that had run its course? Or was there something unspoken behind those carefully chosen words? And that curiosity only grew when fans remembered how this relationship even began, because Burton and Bellucci's story didn't start recently. In fact, the very first spark happened nearly 2 decades ago, in a setting that couldn't have been more cinematic. Their first meeting. The story takes us back to 2006, at the Cannes Film Festival in France, a stage that has witnessed countless glamorous encounters. Among the flashing cameras and red carpet chaos, Tim Burton and Monica Bellucci crossed paths for the very first time. It wasn't a dramatic love at first sight moment. In fact, it was just a brief exchange, almost like a scene that passed too quickly in the script of their lives. At the time, both of them were already committed to other long-term relationships. Burton was deeply involved with actress Helena Bonham Carter, his creative partner and the mother of his children. Bellucci, on the other hand, was with French actor Vincent Cassel, in what was then considered one of Europe's most admired marriages, so whatever spark may have flickered that evening in Cannes had to be set aside. But moments like this can linger in memory, even when nothing comes of them right away. For Burton and Bellucci, that fleeting encounter was the start of something neither of them could have predicted. Because fate wasn't finished with their story, it was simply waiting for the right time to bring them back together. And that right time didn't arrive until more than 15 years later. In the heart of France once again, under circumstances that felt almost too symbolic to ignore. Reconnection after years. Fast forward to 2022. Once again, the backdrop was France, a country that has always seemed woven into Monica Bellucci's story. This time, it was the Lumière Festival in Lyon, an event celebrating cinema's greatest storytellers, and in a twist that felt almost written by destiny, Bellucci wasn't just attending. She was there to honor Tim Burton himself. On that night, she took the stage to present him with the Lumière Award, a lifetime achievement recognition for his decades of visionary filmmaking. For Bellucci, it wasn't just another ceremony. She was honoring a director whose imagination had reshaped Gothic cinema. And for Burton, it was Bellucci, a timeless icon of European film, standing before him with words of admiration. The moment carried a weight that went beyond the usual festival rituals. Observers noted how the two seemed at ease, almost as if no years had passed since that first meeting in Cannes. But this time, there were no long-term relationships standing in the way. The timing was different, the circumstances were aligned, and just like that, the door was open for something new to begin. Not long after, whispers began to circulate. A quiet dinner here, a discreet stroll there, and soon, those whispers grew into rumors that had the press and fans buzzing. Because Burton and Bellucci weren't just reconnecting as colleagues or acquaintances anymore, something much more personal was unfolding. Romance rumors and confirmation. It didn't take long for the world to notice. By early 2023, Photos began surfacing of Tim Burton and Monica Bellucci walking arm in arm through the streets of Madrid. To some, it looked like two friends sharing a moment, but to most, it was clear, this was more than friendship. Whispers turned into headlines almost overnight. Fans online were stunned, not because the pairing didn't make sense, but because it made too much sense. The Gothic mastermind of cinema and one of Europe's most celebrated actresses suddenly appeared inseparable. To many, it felt like the kind of romance you'd only expect to see in the movies. But the couple stayed quiet, letting speculation swirl. Then, in October 2023, they made it official in a way that no one could ignore. At the Rome Film Festival, the two walked the red carpet together, hand in hand, and the cameras couldn't get enough. Burton was there not for his own work, but to support Bellucci at the premiere of her film Maria Callas, Letter e Memory. Coverage from the event described him as so in love and happy, a rare glimpse of vulnerability from the usually private director. And Bellucci herself seemed to confirm just how deep the connection ran. In an interview with Elle France that same year, she didn't hold back. "I know the man. I love him. And now I'm going to meet the director. Another adventure begins." Her words painted the picture of a relationship that wasn't just personal, but also creative, filled with admiration and excitement for what lay ahead. But as fate would have it, their collaboration would become more than just emotional. Very soon, it would take center stage in one of Burton's most anticipated projects of the decade: professional collaboration. For fans, the romance was already captivating, but what truly set their story apart was how quickly it blended into their professional lives. Tim Burton wasn't just Bellucci's partner, he became her director, and not in just any project, but in one of the most anticipated sequels of the decade, Beetlejuice. Burton cast Bellucci as Dolores, a mysterious and villainous figure whose presence promised to bring new energy and danger to the long-awaited return of the cult classic. For audiences, it was a casting choice that felt bold and unexpected, but also perfect. After all, Bellucci's screen presence has always carried a kind of haunting elegance that fits seamlessly into Burton's dark. Their personal chemistry seemed to bleed into their work. When Bellucci spoke about the collaboration, she described it not just as a role, but as an adventure. She was finally discovering Burton not only as a man she loved, but as the visionary director she admired. For her, it was like stepping into two worlds at once, romantic and artistic, both of them intense, both of them unforgettable. And for Burton, it was another chapter in a career defined by muses and creative partnerships. From his long collaborations with Helena Bonham Carter, to his earlier work with Johnny Depp and Winona Ryder, Burton has always thrived on channeling deep personal connections into his films. Bellucci seemed to be the next in that line, a muse who could inspire both his personal life and his art. But history also has a way of repeating itself, and as fans celebrated the blending of love and creativity, others couldn't help but wonder, would this partnership endure? Or was it destined to follow the same bittersweet pattern that had defined Burton's past relationships? Past relationships and context. To understand why some fans questioned the future of Tim Burton and Monica Bellucci's romance, you have to look back at Burton's history. Because for all his wild imagination on screen, his real-life relationships have often followed a familiar, bittersweet rhythm. For over a decade, Burton was inseparable from actress Helena Bonham Carter. They began their relationship in 2001, and for many years, they seemed like the ultimate Gothic power couple, eccentric, unconventional, but deeply bonded. Together they welcomed two children, Billy in 2003 and Nell in 2007. And their creative partnership was just as prolific. Bonham Carter became a recurring presence in Burton's most memorable films, from Sweeney Todd and Alice in Wonderland to Dark Shadows and Corpse Bride. But in 2014, their relationship came to an end, though they were never officially married. Bonham Carter described the split as a divorce, a word that captured just how significant their bond had been. Fans were heartbroken, not just because of the personal separation, but because it seemed to mark the end of one of Burton's most inspired artistic eras. And this wasn't the first time Burton's personal and professional lives collided. Before Bonham Carter, his early collaborations with Winona Ryder and Johnny Depp helped shape the tone of his career, blending close personal ties with unforgettable on-screen results. It's a pattern that has defined his journey: deep relationships, artistic synergy, and eventually, painful separation. So when Burton and Bellucci's partnership moved from romance into collaboration, fans couldn't help but remember this history. Would this new chapter be different? Or was it destined to echo the same story, passion, creativity, and, eventually, heartbreak? The answer came sooner than anyone expected. The breakup, what it means. And then, just as quickly as the story seemed to be unfolding, it came to an end. On September 19th, the statement arrived. Tim Burton and Monica Bellucci were no longer together. No dramatic scandal. No fiery accusations. Just a few carefully chosen words about respect and care. To some, that restraint spoke volumes. In Hollywood, separations are often messy, dragged out in the press with endless speculation. But this was different. The language was gentle, almost protective, as if both were determined to preserve the dignity of what they had shared. Still, for fans, it left a haunting question. Why end something that seemed so full of promise? Rumors began swirling almost immediately. Some suggested the pressures of their careers, especially with Burton immersed in Beetlejuice and Bellucci juggling her own projects. Others pointed to the challenges of maintaining a relationship in the public eye, especially when both partners are legends in their own right. Of course, none of these theories have ever been confirmed. All that's certain is what they've chosen to say publicly, and what they haven't. Yet even in their separation, one detail stood out. The statement's emphasis on deep care left the door open. It suggested that while the romance was over, the bond wasn't broken entirely. Could this mean they'll continue working together professionally, even if their personal chapter has closed? Because if history has shown anything, it's that Burton's relationships don't simply vanish, they transform, leaving behind both art and memory. And for Bellucci, her role in Beetlejuice ensures that no matter what happens next, her place in Burton's world is already cemented. But in the end, this breakup wasn't just about two people. It became a reminder of something bigger, about love, timing, and the fleeting nature of even the most cinematic romances. Tim Burton and Monica Bellucci's story wasn't long, but it was unforgettable. From a fleeting meeting at Cannes nearly 20 years ago, to a reunion that turned into a whirlwind romance, their relationship felt almost scripted by destiny itself. It carried the elegance of two icons crossing paths at the right time, blending love, art, and admiration into something that fans around the world were captivated by. But in the end, even the most magical stories don't always last forever. Their joint statement was a reminder that not every breakup needs to be bitter or explosive. Sometimes, it's simply two people recognizing that their paths, once beautifully aligned, are now moving in different directions. What remains is respect, and perhaps, the possibility of continued creative collaboration. Bellucci's role in Beetlejuice ensures their names will always be linked, at least in the world of film. And for fans, their short-lived romance stands as a reminder of how unpredictable and fleeting love can be, even for the most legendary figures. In Hollywood, relationships often make headlines for their drama, but Burton and Bellucci's story leaves us with something different, a sense of quiet admiration, a romance that burned brightly, and an ending that managed to hold on to grace. And maybe, just maybe, the end of their relationship isn't the end of their story together, but the beginning of another chapter we haven't seen yet.